BLM made everything worse for everyone. That's really that is the headline. That is the reality. BLM made everything worse for crime, for every community, including the black community. BLM made life more difficult for law enforcement officers. BLM has made real estate values in major cities go down as people are fleeing because of these additional issues of cops. I mean, if you look at the Seattle PD, for example, they're down like 30, 40% in police force strength in a couple of years. That's catastrophic.
I mentioned this to you, I think, off air, but I don't believe we discussed it on air. We've been talking about crime and how it is one of the central issues that is being discussed in the closing days of the campaign. This poll came out yesterday, and I thought it was indicative. Question was, do you support or oppose the Black Lives Matter movement? All the voters out there, do you support or oppose Black Lives Matter? In June of 2021, Black Lives Matter had a plus 21 support level. That's right after George Floyd, when every company was sending you an email about BLM, when everybody was allowing BLM to break all the COVID rules, and the scientists were saying, well, we could have hundreds of thousands of people go protest because it's more important than COVID, but kids couldn't be in school, and you couldn't go out and like hang out with your family. Buck, October 2022, do you support BLM? It's now -3. The majority of Americans do not support BLM, and I suspect this is falling faster. But so that's a 24-point swing, and among independents, it's an even bigger swing because these are people who kind of blow with the wind, I would say, to be kind. Independents not particularly plugged in. They've gone from plus 23 to -14, a 37-point swing in the middle part of the country. These are the people that are fed up with crime now.
BLM made everything worse for everyone. That's really that is the headline. That is the reality. BLM made everything worse for crime, for every community, including the black community. BLM made life more difficult for law enforcement officers. BLM has made real estate values in major cities go down as people are fleeing because of these additional issues of cops. I mean, if you look at the Seattle PD, for example, they're down like 30, 40% in police force strength in a couple of years. That's catastrophic. Like you can't actually have that and expect a city to be at any reasonable level of safety. And I think it's interesting, Clay, because usually this is where you'd hear, and there are some true believer leftists. You go on MSNBC and you're just like, oh, this is just like
I love the actually.
And there was this moment, I mentioned this, where the governor of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt, who we've had on the show, his challenger said, well, Oklahoma has a higher violent crime rate than New York or California. Comparing states doesn't really mean anything. You have to look at control of cities. You have to look at St. Louis and Baltimore and New Orleans and Chicago, and you look at all these places, and Memphis. You look at all these cities.
In my home state. That's what I want to play for you now, because Joe Scarborough on MSNBC, Mr. Panhandle Joe, who used to represent a part of Florida that I absolutely love, went on and made this exact argument that idiot left-wingers are making now. And he's saying, well, when you actually look at the data, red states are far more violent than blue states. Listen to him.
This morning before I came on the show, because I've been hearing this so much, you also hear from progressives that crime is actually worse per capita in red state America, in states that voted for Donald Trump. So I actually tweeted out a study this morning, and I said, this study claims that crime's the highest in 8 of the 10 states where it's the highest. They're red states that voted for Donald Trump. Jacksonville had a higher rise of murders than San Francisco, despite the fact they're about the same.
Okay, so Scarborough's an idiot here, and I'll just use my state, which I bet is one of the states with a high crime rate, maybe top 10. So I live in Tennessee. The place where crime is out of control in my home state of Tennessee, and we got a lot of people listening to us right now in Memphis who already know what I'm going to say. It's Memphis, Tennessee. Buck, we discussed this with that awful Eliza Fletcher murder, which crystallized for many people in my state, but also beyond. This mom goes out for an early morning jog. She gets attacked and killed by a guy who should have still been in prison. She was a completely innocent victim of violent crime. That's happening far too often all over this country. Memphis only elects Democrats. Memphis is a blue city. Everything in Memphis is run by the Democrat Party. It has, not surprisingly, the highest rate of violent crime in the country. And when you actually look at those red states, as Joe Scarborough said, and say, okay, where is the actual crime happening? It is overwhelmingly happening in blue run cities, right? And so I'm using my home state of Tennessee as an example. Most of Tennessee is very safe, but in Memphis, it is very dangerous. And the state is not that big, right? There's 6 or 7 million people who live in Tennessee, and 1 million of those people are in the Memphis area. So the Memphis crime stats are going to make it look like the whole rest of the state of Tennessee is very dangerous. Nashville, not as dangerous, not as blue as Memphis. Knoxville and Chattanooga, other big cities, not as dangerous as Memphis, not as blue dominated. The more Democrat control of cities you have, the higher the rate of crime almost exclusively across the country.
Look, this is an argument that they just can't win, which is why there's a panic, because if they do the thing that's obvious, which is to say we actually support police, progressive prosecutors have been a huge mistake, they're admitting that we've been right all along. For them, politically, that's untenable. It also would aggravate the Democrat woke base.
Yes.
They would be afraid of losing woke white voters. They'd be afraid of antagonizing black voters by, saying, oh, well, defund police was a bad idea. This is the perception
actually,
the Democrats...
black voters, too, and this is where it's mostly woke white people who live in safe
This
neighborhoods.
is the point, is that that's their perception from within the party. When you actually go into black communities and say, hey,
police.
Would you like more or less police? The numbers are like 75% and up saying, oh, no, we actually would like more police. We think that it would make this neighborhood safer, and we just want to go about our lives without being harassed, without being worried about crime. And, this is, man, it's amazing. I remember I worked with a guy in the Intel division who wrote a book called Blue Blood. And he talked about a long time ago. Actually, they didn't technically use it for the CBS series. I think there was a little bit of back and forth there, but very similar name. But he was a guy, Eddie Conlon was his name. I remember in his book, he said, people forget, for everyone who complains about a cop, let's say, standing, by the subway entrance in New York City, and this is true everywhere. Everyone who sees a cop, gassing up his car at Buc-ee's, right? Is that the place?
Buc-ee's is yes. Buc-ee's is an incredible
still inundated
spot.
with emails about the Buc-ee's phenomenon. But anyway, for everyone who sees a cop out there, and some person who says, oh, that makes me uncomfortable, or cops are part of some oppressive. There are 100 people who feel a little bit better, a little bit safer, glad that they don't have to worry. Getting on the subway that day, there's someone who has their back. So 99% plus of people in every community are actually seeing a cop and thinking to themselves, all right, there's some backup here, like situation, and we've been told by the woke white left that this is somehow a problem that needs to be addressed, as in fewer cops on the streets. It's crazy.
Woke white people need to be destroyed. I mean, and politically, they are causing most of the problems that exist in America, because it is their sort of looking down on black and brown communities and saying, oh, you guys are so oppressed. Let's pull the police out of your neighborhoods. And meanwhile, those woke white people, a lot of time with their kids in private schools, have as many police as they can afford in the rich white neighborhoods where they live. And they get to go on social media and throw up a BLM slogan and feel good about themselves. Meanwhile, there are thousands of black people that would actually still be alive if police had been able to do their jobs in inner city neighborhoods. And black, white, Asian, Hispanic people of all rational and reasonable and non-insane beliefs overwhelmingly see this. But the argument, just so you know, everybody out there, the left-wing argument that Joe Scarborough tried to trot out there is failed because it's looking at statewide levels when the levels of violent crime are overwhelmingly in Democrat-run cities where they have taken away the ability of police and prosecutors to actually do their jobs.